Okay, great. Thanks everybody for paying attention. And to start off, I'd like to ask everybody a question. It's rhetorical, not a quiz, so don't worry about a thing. But I'd like to wonder if you think you've ever spent any time in life devoting 10,000 hours to a particular task. I thought about this for hours, and I'm not sure I can get through with it. I mean, I'm pretty good at a lot of stuff and great at a couple things, but 10,000 hours, I struggle to find anything. Maybe driving, but that was a lot of commuting. And the reason I ask is because there's a theory that was come up with by a writer named Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers. And he said, based on the work of Swedish psychologists, that if you devote 10,000 hours to any one task, you can become a virtuoso, a master, as great as anybody who has ever done that task. He cited the Beatles as an example, because before they became famous in Liverpool or anywhere in England, they spent 10,000 hours in Germany, in the city of Hamburg, playing live shows, before they performed anywhere in the Western Europe or in the United States. He also cited Bill Gates and several other examples. And the reason that I say this is because there's actually another thinker out of Carnegie Mellon who did the calculations, and he's discovered that by the age of 21 in America, there will be an average of 500 million young people globally that will have played video games for 10,000 hours. A pretty funny looking guy, isn't he? But he is your average American gamer. You know, not overweight, not obese, you know, none of the stereotypes you've learned, just a normal kid who has devoted himself to a hobby. And he's devoted himself so much to that hobby that he is a master at whatever it is that online gaming teaches you how to do. Now beyond that, I bring it up because aside from being a master's student at this school who's written several papers on the subject of gaming, as well as a research proposal to bring gaming into literacy classrooms and to study the effect of reading and writing practice that occurs in online games, this is the one thing that I can say that I've spent 10,000 hours on. I am a virtuoso gamer. And I get to be a little bit lucky because I'm not alone, as you can see by this chart created by Jane McGonigal, a PhD out of California who runs a think tank out of Cal Berkeley. This is back in 2010 when she first started her study. And across the globe, there are 500 million people who have played games for 10,000 hours. By this point, thanks to, as you can see, growing numbers in Southeast Asia and in the rural areas of Russia, and of course in Brazil, which is one of the world's most burgeoning economies, broadband internet has become much more easy to obtain, and children over there are being exposed to the same things we've had in the United States for years. So there are now 1 billion people who are masters at these tasks. And they didn't do this because anybody told them to. They didn't do it because they felt that they had to. Oftentimes they spent their own money on this. They wanted to spend their own free time devoted to a virtual world. Now there are many reasons for this, like sometimes you're just better on the computer than you are in real life. As we heard before, some people are catfishing. They don't like who they are, but they can be something fantastic in a virtual world. And for a child, that's an amazing offer, to be able to go somewhere and to actually be the hero that your parents told you about when they were reading you bedtime stories. That's fantastic to be given that opportunity. And when we were talking to, or when Jane McGonigal was talking about this, she brought up what her think tank had found that online gaming makes these students good at. These are the 4 areas that online gaming can improve in students that are school age. And these are, made up terms. So let me just explain to you how she defines them. Urgent optimism is extreme self-motivation. The desire to act immediately to tackle an obstacle, combined with the belief that there's a reasonable hope of success. Meaning there's no fear, you never feel overwhelmed, you just dive right in and go for it. Social fabric. This is where gamers are trained to work collaboratively with others, because you're not going to be able to accomplish everything on your own, and you understand that. So you immediately seek out help, trusting that there's going to be somebody there to support you, and you offer the same to them. Blissful productivity. This actually means that during the study, gamers reported through survey that they were actually happier working hard in a game, feeling stressed, feeling exhilarated, than they were just sitting around watching TV or reading a book. That's because of the stimulation that they got out of the activity. An epic meaning. This means that they were able to find the greater meaning behind every task that they were doing and really throw themselves into it. Now what these traits translate as is urgent optimism means you're highly motivated, social fabric means you work well with others, and blissful productivity means you're industrious, and epic meaning means you're dedicated. These are adjectives you're going to find on every want ad you will ever see in your life. This is what every employer is looking for. Now, since in this country, 91% of kids, according to the research group NPD, are playing video games, that's approximately 64 million, ages 2 to 17. Now, this is because games are growing. In your pocket right now is a cell phone that is more powerful than any computer that was on sale off the rack when you were born. So you can play any game that you want at any time. And that's because, and these games are growing because of the way that they speak to children. They're designed to teach. As James Paul G., who's a real genius and visionary in this field, has said, a science such as biology is not a set of facts. In reality, it is a game that certain types of people play. These people engage in characteristic sorts of activities, use characteristic tools and language, and hold certain values. That is, they play by a certain set of rules. They do biology. And that's how games are designed. They're designed to bring you in so that you learn a technique, you learn how it's used, and you apply it immediately. This is something that in a classroom can take days or weeks to give you a skill and have you apply it on your own. Games have you doing it in a matter of minutes or hours. Now, there have been controversies around bringing games into classrooms, mostly because of what games are facing in the real world. There have been several trials brought up because of studies put out that say games are too violent, and there are games that have shown that their material is not suitable for all children. But of course, every trial has been dismissed for either having falsified evidence, inaccurate evidence, or because it was a violation of First Amendment rights. And on top of them being dismissed in trial, or I'm sorry, aside from the legal issues, the other controversy surrounding them is that games are supposed to be bad for people. Now you can see here, this is from the ESRB, the ratings board. Every game has to pass through all of these tests. And all but two, this one means no rating has been given yet, but all but two are suitable for every student that is school age. And just for the record, I've been playing games all my life. I've never in my life seen one of these for review or sale in America. I don't even know why it exists. But then there's this fellow. This is the stereotypical gamer that everybody is trying to avoid. He's actually a character from a South Park episode called He Who Has No Life. He was the villain who was trying to take over the world of Warcraft. And this is what everybody thinks of when they see a gamer. The pockmarks, the brace on the wrist because he's been playing for so long, he's got carpal tunnel syndrome. He actually looks like one of my old roommates, but I'll ignore Rocco for now. But these are the fellows I was showing you before. This is from an artist, a photographer named Philip Toldano. And he decided that he was going to take still photos of people while they were immersed in gaming to show that it actually is an active and stimulating activity. You can see everything that they're going through. This guy is engaged in a boss fight, and this is just from my knowledge. I know what these people are doing as soon as I see them. She's grinding through a level up. She's very close to victory. This guy just found a secret, so did she. And this fellow right here, who I showed you before, is on the verge of something that you've probably heard. It's a term called epic win. It means something so fantastic you couldn't even imagine it was possible. He's that close. These are people that have been so enthralled with what they're doing that they just lost themselves and forgot that they were being photographed. And that's because of the activity that's going on in the brain. As you can see from passive activity over on the right, such as reading or watching movies, that there's not a lot being stimulated. But during active activity, interactive play, the brain is literally lighting up. You can see even more from the 3D imaging below. So bringing these to classrooms would satisfy a great deal for students that don't really get enough out of passive texts and watching movies because they don't speak to them. They don't speak to everybody. And new media such as comic books, such as magazines, have been introduced already. And we even have video games in several schools throughout New York. But the problem is that they can be very expensive and they require a lot of common sense and moderation out of the teacher to apply. One school that did it very well is a charter school called Quest to Learn. And they brought in an entire curriculum based around playing games. And they've done very well, but they've had some problems with funding. So the solution is more to bring video games like, say, Little Big Planet, which is a game that's based around building your own levels, and has been used by kids to create plays and stage productions, and to bring things like that and storyline games into traditional classrooms to use them as more presentation tools so that kids can get the 3D representation of what they're trying to build. Now, I'd like to just conclude with two thoughts, if I may, that aren't actually from a game designer. They're from an educator named Sir Ken Robinson, who I've been introduced to since I started in the program, and he really is a brilliant mind. And he started off by saying something that always stuck out to me, which was that nobody knows what the world's going to look like in 5 years' time, but we're meant to be educating people for it. And that seems a bit of a big task. But instead, we look backwards, and we try and educate people from what we know. And the solution is more to look forward one day and just try and educate people for tomorrow. And that makes a little bit more sense to me. And he also talked about a story that he had when he was talking to somebody named Jillian Lane, who a lot of people might not know. She was a dancer. And when she was in school, she was disruptive, she was a problem child, and they made her go see a specialist. And when she went to the specialist watched her and talked to her mother, and then said, okay, I understand everything. Jillian, I'm going to step outside for a few minutes with your mother. Just wait here. And he left, turning on the radio as he left. And he didn't say a word to her mother, just pointed through the window and said, just watch. And she immediately started moving to the music. He said, she's not sick, she's a dancer. This is how she learns. And Jillian got into a school where she flourished because she was surrounded by other people who had to move to think, who learned just like she did. And I'm not telling you this story because I think that everybody should be a professional gamer or game designer, but students and children have a remarkable way of telling you how they like to learn, how they're best suited to move forward in their life. And at this point, with 91% of them engaging in games so regularly, I think it's time that we start listening.